Learn more about Franklin and its history. Visit the Historical Museum at 80 West Central Street. They're open Saturday morning and Sunday afternoon. Visit their website at franklinhistoricalmuseum.org for details. Serving Franklin and neighboring communities. This is WFPRLP, Franklin on 102.9 FM. And worldwide 24/7 at WFPR.FM. So glad you could join us.
Hello, this is Frank Falvey, and before we begin today's program, I would like to call...
Recording in progress.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I'll open up the Franklin Conservation Commission meeting for Thursday, July 21st. Patrick Gallagher. I am participating remotely tonight due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. We are continuing to meet in a hybrid format, both in person at Town Hall and via Zoom for anyone who would like to participate remotely or who also has COVID right now. If you'd like to participate via Zoom, the meeting number is 810-4330-3701. You can also dial in on your phone. The phone number is 929-205-6099. And again, the meeting number is 810-4330-3701. Again, I'm participating remotely. Can we just take a quick roll of who is in chambers tonight?
Jeff Milne, present, sir.
Michael Ryan.
Jeff Livingstone, present.
Great. Well, I think with that, we will get started. The first item on for this evening is a public hearing for Chilson Park, 380 Beaver Street, and this is an amendment to a previously issued order of conditions. Sounded like Brooke is here on behalf of DPW. Brooke, do you want to, if you're there, fill us in on what we've got before us tonight, please?
Thank you. My name is Brooke Morganelli, the Assistant Town Engineer in Franklin. So we're requesting the amendment to the final order of conditions. So we're making a couple changes within the 200-foot riverfront buffer zone. So we'll be removing a synthetic turf track surface. So that'll be removing 497 square feet within that zone. We'll be resizing the lacrosse ball, as you can see here, making it a little bit smaller, and we're also going to be putting synthetic turf around that. Otherwise, it would erode out with the use of the wall. We're also, and that's pretty much all the changes we'll be making within the buffer zone. So that site is actually not really natural, and it's pre-disturbed because they had previously graded it when they were doing some other work on the site. The net increase will be 943 square feet within the riverfront buffer zone, 200 foot, with the semi-permeable turf surface, which I actually, here's a sample of what it'll be. So this is avoiding the crumb rubber infill. It's kind of a soft surface. Yep. So we also resubmitted the abutter notices, and also to tell you more about the turf, it's synthetic turf. Below it's going to be the 12 inches of gravel with the 2 stacked 6x6 timbers.
Great. Brika, any comments, questions on the application?
No, nothing for me.
Great. I also didn't have any questions or comments. Jeff Milne, anything, questions to raise?
Jeff Milne, no questions, thank you.
Great. Jeff Livingstone, anything?
I had
Any question?
One question. So I noticed in the notes, the conservation agency notes, that the border for the turf will be pressure-treated timbers, remove concrete or other impervious. So just my question is that putting pressure-treated lumber in the ground in the buffer zone?
So we were hoping to use the pressure treated timbers. We've been told by the installer that it's an environmentally feasible option that most schools use. I can get more information. He kind of gave me the safety data sheets
So
on that.
I'm not objecting to it, I'm just
Okay.
making a point. I just, historical anecdote.
Mhm.
Typically, when people have built things like decks, put fencing up, et cetera, we've told them not to use pressure-treated wood because of the very harsh chemicals that are in the
Mhm.
wood that ultimately will leach into the ground.
Mhm.
So that's been a standard practice in the conservation for a long, long time. So that's the reason why I was asking about the pressure-treated.
Mhm.
What were they? Because if you actually, most pressure-treated wood uses things like cyanide, et cetera,
Mhm.
to mitigate the
Mhm.
growth of fungus and other,
Mhm.
moss, et cetera. So I'm just curious, basically, what is it? Since I don't think there is such a thing as environmentally safe
Mhm.
pressure-treated lumber.
So
Yeah.
there's AQC treated lumber.
Okay.
And that doesn't have the copper arsenic.
Arsenic, yeah, it's
Yeah,
arsenic,
so
that's
that's
it,
not.
yeah. Yeah,
So,
okay.
You
Fine.
could put it as a condition. Otherwise, I believe you
Yeah.
mentioned you could do concrete as well,
Yeah.
right?
Did you say KPC?
AKC.
AKC, okay.
AQC, I'm sorry.
Okay, because I had the safety data sheet here.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can tell from that, but we can use that as a condition.
yeah.
Okay.
So that would be my
All right.
one
That-
recommendation
That-
aside
At
from
least
the
that would be
original.
consistent with what
Mhm.
we've done.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
it. Thank you.
Thanks, Brooke.
Thank you.
Michael, any questions or comments?
No questions, thank you.
This is a public hearing. Any members of the public, either in person or on Zoom, have any questions or comments on the application?
Can I ask you just one real quick question? Is it nothing related to conservation? Out of curiosity, if this goes forward, just
Mhm.
roughly, when would the field be ready to actually be used? I'm just curious, what is the
Sure.
timeline?
So they're actually doing the work on it now. Is we were holding off on actually putting any surface down until it was approved. So hopefully by the end of the summer.
Oh,
No, it's
that'd
not
be
a great time to work on a field
No,
in the
but that's
summer,
great.
but
Yeah, okay.
hopefully by the fall, we're gonna try to the practice fields, which is not in the zone. Well, I guess it's partially in the zone, but it's just gonna be a grass field, not changing from our original NOI. We're gonna plan to see that sometime in the August, September timeframe.
Oh, because there are lots of families and kids that are on the Franklin page talking about this, and
Yeah.
they can't wait to use it.
Yeah,
It's
great.
it'd
Great, we're
be-
happy to
yeah,
do
There's
that.
lots of support for the upgrades, yeah.
Great.
Great. Barring any further comments or questions, I think we can probably close out the hearing. Can I get a motion to close the hearing for 380 Beaver Street?
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Milne, I'll give you a motion to close the hearing for Chilton Park, 380 Beaver Street.
Michael Ryan,
Thanks, Jeff.
second.
Great. Jeff Livingstone, how do you vote?
Yes, vote to close?
Great. Michael?
Vote to close.
Jeff
Okay.
Milne, vote to close.
Jeff Milne? Okay, and Pat Gallagher, I vote to close as well. So the public hearing for Chilton Park, 380 Beaver Street is closed.
Thank you.
Jeff Livingstone, how do you want to make the motion? In that way, you can frame the condition around the pressure-treated wood. Do you want to frame that around using efforts to find an alternative, or to use, environmentally friendly version of that? What's your preference?
I would say environmentally friendly. If there's use of pressure-treated lumber, to try to use environmentally conscious options, I guess is how I put it, yeah.
Okay. I think, do you want to make a motion to
will.
approve the amendment subject
Sure,
to the
sure.
condition as stated?
Sure, so I'll move to approve the the motion for Chilton Park, 380 Beaver Street with original conditions, with an additional condition requesting that the applicant make attempts to use environmentally acceptable treated lumber, if indeed treated lumber is going to be used.
And Could someone second that, please?
Michael Ryan, second.
Okay. Jeff Milne, how do you vote?
Jeff Millen votes to approve.
Okay. Jeff Livingstone?
Approve.
Okay. Michael Ryan?
Vote to approve.
Okay. And Pat Gallagher, I vote to approve as well. So the amendment to the order of conditions for Chilson Park is approved.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
Thanks, Brooke. Next up, we have a request for determination of applicability from National Grid for the Maple Street stub pole installation project. Do we have anyone with us in person or on Zoom for National Grid?
Hello, everyone. I'm in person. This is Carolyn Gorse from BSC Group, here representing the Massachusetts Electric Company for this RDA for the installation of a stub pole within the 100-foot buffer zone to BVW, the replacement of one utility pole within buffer zone to BVW, and the replacement of one pole within BVW, and the subsequent removal of its stub pole from the wetland that it's currently located in. And the overall, the reason for this project is these poles are deteriorating, and instead of replacing the stub pole connected to the utility pole in the BVW, they are proposing the stub pole across the street to provide the necessary support for that utility pole in the wetland. This way, there's less structure in the wetland itself. So vegetation management will also be necessary for the replacement and installation of these poles, including the removal of 15 mature trees. And we had some questions come in from the Conservation Commission prior to, and I believe we submitted those answers yesterday. Did you receive them all?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was a question on where the trees were located, and 2 of those trees are located closer to pole 4889. 3 trees are located across the street from pole 4990. That's the new stub pole. 4 trees are located along the midspan between pole 49 and 50, and 2 trees are located closer to pole 50. 2 trees are located along the midspan from pole 50 to 51, and 2 trees are located close to pole 51. And again, those tree removals have been identified as necessary to provide the sufficient clearance for the electrical lines. In total, permanent impacts to the buffer zone will include approximately 2 square feet, which is the footprint of that one stub pole installation. Temporary impacts are anticipated for the replacements of those other 2 utility poles. Access to the activities will be conducted entirely from the roadway, and we will be installing erosion and sedimentation controls prior to the work beginning. And as you've requested, we will do compostable tubes instead of straw wattles.
Can I ask you just real quick?
Absolutely.
Again, simple question, but for those people who are actually watching, some people do watch the conservation because they are interested.
Yes.
People might not know what a quote stub pole is. How does that?
It's not a full utility pole, but it
Okay.
is there to provide support to the utility pole.
see.
If one is at an angle or it needs pressure coming from a certain direction.
I see. So
Adds
structural support,
yes,
right?
structural support.
Okay.
Okay. Brika, did you have any questions? I know you had some initial questions for the applicant. Were those all addressed?
Yes, they were, and I did conduct a site visit, and pole 49 is quite at an angle. So I think
Really?
restabilization is good, and I think this minimized direct impacts as a whole to BVW. So I recommend approval, and considering they've already mapped the biodegradable compost wattles, I'm okay with just a straight negative determination.
Okay. Jeff Milne, any questions or comments?
No questions, sir.
Okay, thanks. Jeff Livingstone?
None.
Okay. Michael Ryan?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. I also don't have any questions. Is there anyone, any members of the public, either in person or on Zoom tonight, who have any questions on this project? Okay. Well, hearing none, I'll take a motion to close the hearing on the Maple Street stub pole installation project.
I guess I do have a question, I'm sorry.
Oh, sure.
So with the tree removal, do we want to ask about the the stumps?
Stumps are always left in place, so there will be no ground disturbance as a result of those tree removals.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Milne, I'll give you a motion to close the RDA hearing for N-Grid Maple Street sub-pole installation project.
Second?
Jeff, how do you vote?
Close.
Oh, sorry. Either Jeff. Vote to close?
Okay, I vote to close.
Okay. Michael?
Vote to close?
Jeff Milne votes to close.
Great. And Pat Gallagher, I vote to close as well. So the hearing is closed. I take a motion to approve the issuance of a negative determination.
Brika, what would be the conditions on this?
Sorry,
Were there conditions on?
No, they've permitted, they've included in their permit everything that I would condition, so therefore it's
Okay.
enforceable.
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Milne, I'll give you a motion to approve the N-Grid for Maple Street sub-pole installation project.
Second. Second. Great. Jeff Livingstone, how do you vote?
Approve.
Okay. Michael, how do you vote?
Vote to approve?
Jeff Milne votes to
Jeff.
approve.
Great. And Pat Gallagher, I vote to approve as well. So the negative determination is approved.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have the notice of intent for the Beaver Street Interceptor project. Is anyone here for the applicant?
Yes. Hi, my name is Doug Martin. I'm the Town of Franklin.
Have you signed in?
Oh, yep, we will. Town of Franklin Water and Sewer Superintendent. With me, I have Amy Anderson and Sean Mitchell from Arcadis. You guys want to?
Yeah, if you guys could please sign in first, and then you can fill us in on the application.
All right. We all set? Okay. Quickly, I'm just going to give you a quick overview, and then I'll hand it over to these guys to give you some more details. But this is for the Beaver Street Interceptor project. It's both repair and rehabilitation in some sections. Beaver Street Interceptor is about over 110 years old now. It is undersized and needs to be upgraded. So this is going to be the biggest infrastructure project that the town of Franklin has undertaken. We're estimating about $33 million right now. Wow. And that, a lot of that has to do with just the nature of the industry right now. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Amy, and she'll kind of walk you through the particulars as well as the specific areas where we're going to be impacting the wetlands.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm just
Sure.
curious, since I have you here.
Yeah.
Just, that's a big bill, obviously, this is a huge project.
It is, yes.
2 years construction is huge, right?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, because this really does impact public health.
Correct.
Does that mean that the state steps in to pay for part of it, or there's some sort of granting agency or something?
So we have applied and been, well, we're on the list to receive state revolving fund loans. So we will be applying or or sending in our loan application for that once we get bids from contractors.
Okay.
So once we know the price and all that kind of stuff. And hopefully we'll get some loan forgiveness as well as part of the infrastructure bill. So.
Okay.
Yep.
We did just pass out a modified version of a figure that was part of the NOI application. And just so you guys are all aware, we did submit the NOI. Brika provided us a bunch of comments, and we are still implementing those. So there are some things that we will be modifying, and you guys will get a modified version of that. So at this point, I was just gonna walk through high level what the project consists of, where we are actually impacting wetlands, what the project's all about. If you look, I guess we can just start in the corner, the colors, the Beaver Street interceptor starts over on Cottage Street in the far right-hand side of this figure. And you can sort of trace it, the pink to the blue to the pink. That's all existing interceptor. Where you get to that yellow, looks like it says Beaver Street Pump Station, that's where the new pump station will be. And then if you were to continue almost following the Mine Brook, you'll see a gray line with red X's. That's the part of the interceptor that we're actually going to abandon. So that's the really hard to reach, hard to maintain, very deep existing interceptor.
Does that actually run underneath the actual, physically underneath the highway?
It does.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yep. So to sort of color code this figure, so you understand it a little bit better, the pink coloring means we're rehabilitating the pipe in place. So in some instances that is in the wetlands, but we're not digging, that's trenchless rehabilitation. And then the blue coloring is where we need to upsize the pipe. So either the configuration is not correct, so for one example, the pipe currently runs underneath a building, so we're gonna remove it from underneath the building and route around the building.
Okay.
There are two instances, and I'll call them out, where the pipe is currently exposed right now, the interceptor. So there's two head walls and an exposed pipe with a little stream that runs underneath it in terrible condition. So we need to replace all of that as well. That's shown here in a little purple circle. So that's, if we're still over in that right-hand corner, in between manhole 9 and manhole 10. At that point, the interceptor actually goes underneath the railroad. So we're just continuing on. We'll be upsizing 2 more segments there. And then for a fair portion from about manhole 12 through manhole 29, that section of the interceptor we are rehabilitating using trenchless technologies. We're not digging that up. So we'll need access in terms of construction vehicles. We'll need to do some clearing there just to get our equipment in and out, but we're not digging anything up in those locations.
So basically, this entire thing was laid down before any of this development was
Exactly
here.
right.
So all the development just sits on top? Okay, well, and the highway and the whole 9 yards and everything?
All of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
it was the perfect place to put it in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, at the time,
At
right?
the time.
Right? There's nothing here.
Yeah.
So when we get to the middle of this figure, where the pump station is, you'll see a blue line that has another purple circle. That's existing interceptor that we are actually we're changing the slope, we're running it backwards against itself, abandoning that terrible, hard to reach portion of the interceptor and putting in a new Beaver Street pump station right at the existing town rec center,
I see.
rec
Yes.
So instead of
facility
going
building.
out, it basically comes back and then gets pumped.
Yep.
out. I see. Yeah.
And then the yellow dashed line is a new force main that's gonna run up Beaver Street, down West Central Street, where it'll connect with some new upsized gravity sewer, and then eventually hit
Got
the
it.
existing Beaver Street interceptor up there.
Yep.
So other work that's going on, like I said, we're abandoning that, the red X pipe behind Franklin Village Mall. Just for some history, those manholes are, what would you say, 45 feet deep, impossible to maintain,
Right.
need to be abandoned. We can't
Probably
do that
very
anyway.
dangerous even to be down there, yeah.
And then on the other side of 495, there's Grove Street. There's an existing siphon. That siphon is staying in place. A part of this project was to investigate it to make sure that it's in good working condition, and it is. It's been cleaned. So the existing alignment is the flow would come down Grove Street heading towards the 495 interchange, cut across 495 and go north. Again, that's getting rerouted, so that Grove Street blue pipe is getting upsized, and the flow is heading down towards like the BJ's area. We're rerouting it to go the other way, or reconfiguring to go the other way.
Right.
The areas here that are color-coded with that red shading, those are the areas of most concern in terms of wetlands. So they're blue, their color-coded pipes are blue, which means it's open-cut excavation. We either have stream crossings, they're in the wetland areas, and then over on it turns into from Grove Street to West Central Street again, over right next to the 99.
Mhm.
There is a pipe currently, right now, it's a stream crossing, so it's resting on two concrete piers.
Oh.
That has to be completely upsized. So
Oh.
the only way to do that, and it's in that stream area, is to put in helical piles and a whole new support system for that pipe. So those are the three big areas where we will have wetland impacts on this project.
Man, there's nothing easy about this thing at all, nothing.
No.
Wow, this is a hugely complicated project. Wow, okay.
Could you talk through some, and if you have more to present, please feel free to finish that before getting to this. But could you talk through any other approvals that are required in connection with this? I just want to get a sense of kind of what the scope of the approvals are and
permits?
timing, and that's right.
Yeah, so we are going for Army Corps. We need Mass Highway, DOT permit.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, we have 4 MBTA crossings on this project. Mass Historical Commission, we've done that. So almost all of them.
Wow,
Sean, am I forgetting any?
Probably.
wow, okay,
And meet by Imagine as well.
wow, okay,
Working on that.
Mass Historical or?
Mass Historical, yep.
wow.
We already got that back.
So, and I'm sorry, did I cut you off? Were you
No, you
were you
did
done?
not. I was just giving a high-level overview because we're still working on the revised NOI, more open for questions that you guys have.
Okay. Brika, can I start with you if you have any questions for now?
Sure.
Knowing that there's a lot of information to be filled in.
Yeah, it's more just prompt questions. So for the abandoned pipe, are you proposing to fill that with anything when you abandon it?
Yeah, we've gone back and forth on that a lot. But yes, we are going to fill it to abandon it. yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask you just, again,
Yeah.
just general question, it's really not conservation, but since you're here, is there, my guess is no, but is there any safety issue leaving the pipe abandoned, not actually removing it or something like that? I mean, not that you could, but portions that you could remove, not removing them. Does it pose any kind of public safety issue?
Well,
People messing with the pipes, kids messing around, whatever, no, right?
typically you take the manhole. You want to answer this?
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
What
So
would you,
hi, my name is Sean Mitchell. I'm with Arcadis as well. So typically the frame and cover will be taken off in the top 2 feet of the manhole. So it'd be abandoned in place, but it'd be below grade.
Right.
I see.
Would be
Okay.
visible.
Yep.
So no one can mess around like, hey, let's go down in the sewers and,
Right.
Nope.
that kind of thing.
What type of sewer is it? Is it being pumped? Is it gravity fed?
So any coloring that on this figure, it's the easiest to explain it. Anything that's pink or blue, that's gravity sewer.
Okay.
The yellow dashed line, so if you look at the Beaver Street pump station, it looks like a yellow and black dashed line that
Right.
comes up.
Right.
And it goes down West Central Street. That's a pressure sewer, that's a force main.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
so wherever you see, I think on the legend, wherever you see force main called out, that would be a pressure. Everything else is gravity.
Got it.
The
So-
system right now is all gravity.
So then for crossing the 4 perennial streams, if it's gravity fed, that means there would be no trenching. It's all attached to the existing bridge, right? Or above grade to keep
Where we're,
that.
the exposed pipe stream crossings, so the actual pipe itself,
Yep.
you're correct, but we have to replace those head
Yep.
walls. They're broken and cracked, so there's trenching involved in that.
Yep, okay.
Hmm.
Thank you for clarifying. And then I know I sent an email, but I was wondering, when I went out, I didn't see wetland flags. I know that there's GPS data, because on the CAD drawings, it has wetland flag 1, wetland flag 2. Just wondering if it was flagged years ago and they've fallen, or if I'm just short, or where is it?
It was flagged at the start of the project, which may have been a little bit over a year ago.
Okay.
It was not as overgrown as it is now when they're flagged, so they
Okay.
might be a little hidden.
Okay. All right, so then just as a preemptive request, I know you're still working through the NOI, for those areas that workers will be trenching in wetlands or working adjacent, I'd ask that those actually be reflagged. It can be a very conservative line, right? Just so there's line of sight for the workers, so they know where their access is, where they can stockpile, where they shouldn't go, things of that nature.
Okay.
Otherwise, yeah, I look forward to seeing the revised, revamped NOI.
So I'm going to just reserve my questions for the time being. The only question is for Brika. Just wanted to see if, I imagine that Beta and WSI will also be taking a look at this, but I wanted to check.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. Beta is able to go out next week to review the delineation as well. I can let them know that they should look low for the flags.
But I didn't have any other questions for the time being. But looking forward to hearing how this is going to develop. Jeff Milne, any questions?
There's a lot to take in. This time I have no questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Jeff Livingstone?
No, beautifully presented. Thank you very much. This was extremely helpful. Thank you.
Michael, any questions for now?
No questions. Thank you for presenting it to us.
This is a public hearing. We're obviously going to be continuing this, and we'll hear, I think, a lot more on this project going forward. But if there are any questions from the public for now, based on what we've heard initially, please feel free to raise your hand if you're on Zoom or step up if you're in the room. Barring any questions, I think, and unless, Brika, if there's anything else that you need for now, otherwise I think we can take a motion to continue.
No, I'm all set, thanks.
Great.
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Milne, I'll give you a motion to continue the NOI for the Beaver Street Interceptor.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Jeff Livingstone, how do you vote?
Vote to continue?
Okay, Michael?
Vote to continue.
Jeff Milne?
Jeff Milne votes to continue.
And Pat Gallagher, I vote to continue as well. But thank you very much again for the presentation, and looking forward to working with you all on this.
Great.
Next up, we have the continued NOI for 585 King Street. I do see some of the team on with us. I know you guys had requested a continuance, but being as you are with us, wanted to check and see if there are any changes there, or if there's anything that you'd like to present for now.
Hi, thanks, Mr. Chairman. We just wanted to give the commission a quick update and talk about a single technical matter briefly, if we could do that.
Of course, please.
Thanks. So since we were before you a couple weeks ago, we've submitted revised plans along with a revised alternatives analysis. Your consultants, Beta and Wetland Strategies, have provided comment letters. I think it's safe to say we've addressed the vast majority of their comments at this point. We did want to talk about one particular item that is sort of lingering. I don't think it's a major issue, but just something that was in need of further discussion since we're here together at this meeting, and that is stabilization of the culvert, of the bank beneath the culvert. So just to give the commission a little background, we're proposing to construct a culvert over the intermittent stream, and we intend to leave the stream channel intact during construction. And the comment essentially was that we needed to consider methods to stabilize that channel after the culvert's installed. And the suggestion was made that we analyze whether or not vegetation could survive underneath the culvert, and if not, to come up with an alternative method for making sure that the banks of the stream are stabilized. So we don't think vegetation will survive underneath most of it, maybe near the two ends of it where there's some light penetration. A shade tolerant seed mix could become established and provide some stabilization, but further in the culvert, given its length, it's unlikely we would get significant vegetation to become established there sufficiently to provide stabilization. So we talked about using a coir log as stabilization. It's something that would be, I think, determined during construction once we have the footings in place and we're sort of able to have a good look at the stream embankments and understand how stable they are naturally and sort of what the necessary stabilization measures are. These coir logs, if you're not familiar with them, I believe they're made out of coconut fiber, so they naturally decompose over time, and you sort of tow them in on the embankments on either side of the stream, and they essentially function as the lower part of the embankment for the initial multiple years after the construction is complete, and they slowly decompose over time, and then natural deposition of sand and silt sort of takes their place and forms a stable embankment. So we're curious if that seems reasonable to your peer reviewers and if they have any feedback on that.
Lenore, Gary, can you weigh in on that?
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about the coir logs. I mean, what does concern me is that, as you point out, Mark, they do, break down over time. So I don't know that, over time, we're going to have a stabilization mechanism in there. I don't think there's, enough flow that, as you suggest that there's going to be some sand or material that, stabilizes those banks. I don't think there's a lot of movement of sediment down those channels. It's certainly not enough to create a bank. So, I get it. There's a concern about stabilization, but I don't know what the solution is. I don't know that it's the coir logs, but I don't know what the solution is. That's kind of out of my ballpark when it comes to stabilizing slopes that don't get any sunlight.
Mr. Chairman, one of the members of our staff has actually reviewed a project that did involve a culvert of this nature in terms of stabilization of the embankment and even of the over embankment of the area beyond the limits of the channel on either side. And he actually had, his name is Jonathan Nero, and he has developed, they had developed a certain methodology to be able to do this. And I believe perhaps the way to do this is let him get in touch with Breaker and Lee. Breaker Lee and Jonathan can then discuss this with Mark and come up with a solution. But I agree with Mark. We all agree. The vegetation is just not going to survive in the middle of this channel, in the middle of this culvert. It's going to become bare at some point in time, and there is going to have to be some form of stabilization. But like I said, Jonathan does have some experience with this. They do have one out in the western part of the state that he was reviewing, and it has stabilized. So I'm going to pass this on to him, and I think we'll let him and Breaker Lee discuss this with Mark and come up with a final solution.
So I had a question for
Mark, does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds great to me. The sort of the overriding factor here is that this isn't a stream channel at this point that receives heavy flow. So we don't feel like there's going to be major scouring happening here, but we do understand the comment and want to do something about it.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Jeff, it sounded like you had a question.
Yeah, I just had a question just for Brika. So this has come up in the past where we've had commercial projects where they've tried to do culverts. Again, the shade has made it very important, and it's been difficult. It's been difficult to find stabilization methods. So if indeed this fellow mentioned has some interesting ideas, it would be great to hear about them just for beyond this specific project. And also, I don't know if this is possible, but if anybody has any pictures of stabilized areas by whatever means seem to have worked, it would be great to see them if there are any that exist. That would be very helpful to the commission, frankly.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff. Brika, when we talked earlier, I know there were a couple other things that you had discussed with the applicant. As far as you know, are there any other issues that you'd consider open, or things that we've asked the applicant to revise?
Sure. So for the commission, the applicant has moved all the replication areas out of the easement. I had a quick question for Mark. The 2 areas for replication area 4, do those have a connection? I see a flag line connecting on the CAD drawings. I just don't know if that's the existing or if that's being left in place, if there's still that hydraulic connection between those 2.
Yes, they are connected.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. And then all the other rep areas as well, connected somehow to their original, perfect. Okay, and then actually, this past conversation with the culvert spurred another question. I know it was brought up during our work session about a grate to get some light in there. Is that still not feasible? Is that feasible? Is that a consideration?
I believe Bowler at that meeting indicated that that was not feasible due
Yep.
to the sort of the thickness
Yep.
above the culvert.
Okay.
So there are utilities going over the culvert, and then above that is the pavement and the sub base, and then the pavement.
Okay.
And I think the opinion of Bowler was that that was just too far. You really wouldn't get any bang for your buck with putting a grate there in terms of light penetration below, especially given the length of the culvert.
Okay, thanks for clarifying, Mark. Other than that, that's all I had.
Brika. So Mark, question for you, and I guess Brika, this is a little bit for you as well. I know that, so anticipating being close to taking a vote on this, Brika had drafted a number of conditions that we would expect to be imposed in connection with any approval. Just wanted to see if you had an opportunity to review those, had any questions for us, for Brika, that were worth talking about, or if you're comfortable with the conditions that were proposed.
Yes, generally comfortable. There was one question about construction sequence as it relates to the wetland replication areas. I think Josh may have spoken with Brika about that already, so I think we've determined that we can work that out. But other than that, I don't have any major concerns at this point. If there is anything, I will communicate that to Brika between now and the next hearing.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And Brika, would it be helpful just to quickly summarize those conditions, just for those who are listening, and to understand what we would be asking in addition to our standard conditions?
Sure. I'll try to summarize as best as possible while reading them as well. So first, the condition 1 is set forth in 310 CMR 10.554B, sans 10.554B1, as 4B1 regulates replication area ratios, and Franklin is more stringent with a 2-to-1 replication area. Special condition 2 is that all replication areas should be completed per the approved plans prior to any other construction of any other work. This is the condition that Josh reached out to me because they need to construct a drive. So I told him if he could give me information about what he needed, specs, things like that, then I could review and we could go forward with that. I must confirm that all erosion and sediment controls have been installed per the approved plans prior to the construction of the replication areas. I need to be invited to any pre-construction meeting. I also need to conduct another site visit to confirm that the ENS controls, that is erosion and sedimentation controls, have been installed and maintained per the approved plans after the construction of the replication areas, but before construction of any other work. Any new contractors must receive environmental training from, who I would assume Mark, a wetland scientist, to ensure that they are compliant with the order of conditions, right? We don't want any new contractors coming in and not knowing what they're doing. Timber mats shall be used when crossing or working within BVW or the intermittent stream, including the proposed access to all wetland replication areas. All dewatering and discharges shall occur on level upland outside of the 100-foot buffer zone with secondary containment. Oh, sorry, I'm all turned around now. Where's my other page? Thank you. Tyler. No debris, fill, or excavated material shall be stockpiled within the 100-foot buffer zone. All stockpiles shall be surrounded by biodegradable compost wattles for the duration of the project. The wattles shall be kept in good working condition for the entirety of the project. All wetlands and replication areas shall have biodegradable compost wattles surrounding their limits. And then beginning the first week of construction, in which construction activity occurs on site, and for as long thereafter as the ground remains destabilized, a wetland scientist must submit a written report to the conservation agent. And then additional standard special conditions that are recommended include 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, and 51. And the applicant and the rep has received all of those conditions.
Thank you, and
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking the time and thought to draft those conditions for the applicant. Thank you for your openness to those conditions. I just want to emphasize that I think this project has been very closely reviewed by a number of people, and I think it's reflective of our ongoing want to be involved here and to continue to work with the applicant here is reflected in those conditions. So thank you, Brika, and thank you, Mark and team. Before turning to any questions from the public, any questions from the commission? Jeff Milne?
Jeff Milne, no questions right now, sir.
Jeff Livingstone?
No, done.
Okay. And Michael?
So in one of your last paragraphs, briefly, you mentioned some options that the commission might have. Is that something we should talk about?
Sure, that was actually a WSI comment. I don't think it's necessarily required, considering my special condition conditions that they complete all replication areas.
Right, okay, exactly.
And no further questions, thank you.
And just for the benefit of the public, so that you know what we're talking about here.
Sure,
and Brika or Lenore, please feel free to jump in as well. There was a question of whether, in addition to the conditions that Brika had summarized, would we want to require the applicant to post a bond to secure the construction of the replication areas? My view of that is that, as Brika said, based on the other conditions that we would be specifying, I think a bond would be redundant and would impose an additional, probably unnecessary cost on the applicant. But, just in the interest of telling everyone what it is we're talking about, I think, that's the question. And obviously, if anyone has any thoughts or questions on that topic as well, welcome to share.
Just, again, if I may, one historical anecdote.
Sure.
Since I've been here, we've only done that twice, and usually it was two situations where there was a lot of contention between the commission and the applicant, or something had gone on for a long time, or, in the second case, there was a question about whether the builder itself might actually stay in business or not.
Yeah.
So you'd be stuck with basically a half-done project, but because it was half-done at the time, if it had been half-done, it would have posed a significant environmental impact, right? So the monies posted possibly could have been used then to actually find someone else to come in and finish the project, not leaving it in its state, which then would impact the environment.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And thanks, Lenore.
You're welcome.
So with that, are there any members of the public, either on Zoom or in person, who have a question or comment on this project?
Coming up.
Finish writing after. Hi, Karen Miller. My question is more as we move forward with this project, right? And I mentioned this quite some time ago, maybe in relation to the other project, so I apologize. But on the website, when you look up the Conservation Committee website, the first line of it says, "The Conservation Commission is the official agency specifically charged with the protection of Franklin's natural resources. The commission also advises other municipal officials and boards on conservation issues that relate to their areas of responsibility." You guys have taught me so much, and I fully understand your wetland protection. I fully understand that, right? My question to you guys tonight is, when we sit on the other boards, and it has been specifically said by applicants, maybe not this applicant, but other applicants, that conservation, the protection of the natural resources, that's this board's responsibility, right? When, like I said, I've got that message loud and clear, but that's our website. And so, like, it goes to the planning board, and the planning board feels those issues have been addressed by this commission. And I'm just wondering, kind of like, going forward, this project is a great example of it. There was another one that was a good example of it. But going forward, kind of like the communication, and how do you rectify that? We looked at this team looked at wetlands, not conservation, not the deer, not the trees, not the, the protection of the natural resources. So maybe I didn't not looking for a total answer, but more as a comment, right? Working with the planning board or whomever.
Okay.
So I think plain language, well, go ahead, Pat, go for it.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I do think you're making a good point, Karen. I think it's an opportunity to educate others, to educate other boards, and to make sure that, there aren't gaps in areas that, aren't being accounted for and aren't being reviewed just in general for projects. And I think we don't want to be misleading anyone into what our role is and what the other board's roles are as well. So I think it's a very good point. And I think it's important that, people know that this is a team effort, and you have a number of different boards reviewing different pieces of a particular project. And I would also add here, and something that is unique to this project that is not, necessarily the case for other projects that come before this, but this project has also undergone scrutiny at the state level under MEPA, which is the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act. And so not only has this project been reviewed by local agencies, but it's also been reviewed on the state level. And so it really is a collaborative effort to look at all of these different pieces.
And I'm not saying at all you guys didn't do your job. So don't get me wrong, because that is not what I'm saying at all. I understand what you guys are doing. What's happening is other boards think you guys are doing something you're not responsible for. So I'm not for 1 second saying you guys didn't do a thorough job.
To piggyback off of Pat, plain language is important, right? And so that's what I would categorize this under, is natural resources, wetland resources, right? I can bring that up internally to other people for other boards that are in my position as well. But I also wanted to add a caveat, and maybe it's a little self-serving, but the other part of my position is Natural Resource Protection Manager. So that's where we get into the conservation lands that maybe are not under the purview of the Conservation Commission, who does wetland resources, and that's where I come in also. So that's where you get your trail maps and things of that nature that are outside buffer zone, outside of their jurisdiction. So I can bring that up internally to maybe segment that out, and then that way there's either a link or there's just a page for conservation as a holistic approach instead of Conservation Commission as it relates to wetlands. Does that make sense?
So I have a comment.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I have a comment and an opinion.
Yeah, go for it.
So there are at least two, I would say, boards, if you will, in the town that probably closest touch the citizens. One is conservation, the other one is health and safety, right? Yep. Probably they touch the because when you are in the town and you're walking around, you're going to you can actually see, you actually participate in what conservation does. You go to Delcarte, you go to the playgrounds, you go to the wilderness areas, you're on the natural properties, things of this nature. So I think it's something that possibly evokes the most interest of the citizens. And the reason I say this is that most of the time, if you go back through the history, when the commission is made aware of natural resource impacts through the citizens, through this, like yourself, citizens coming up and saying something, saying, you know, I've lived here for 10 years and there's always been deer or something, or I know that this is, you know, this stream is, you know, always running, it's not intermittent, you know, this kind of thing. So basically you have people on the ground, the citizens themselves, act as the so-called additional observers. Essentially becomes an extension of the eyes and ears of the commission and the agent, right? We try, it's not our mission necessarily to foster this, but we do try to foster this. Things like Earth Day, for example, education, events like this, right? So we're trying to make the citizens aware that they actually play a very important and impactful role in conservation in Franklin by being effectively an extension of us, right? So there is an intimacy between conservation and citizens that few other boards share. We understand that, and we honestly, again, not being so self-serving, but we honestly try to take advantage of that intimacy when we can. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I have one other additional comment to piggyback on that. I think that's a good point. And natural resources is a buzzword, right? It gets people in. For example, I'm adamant at wetland resources and not just wetland or swamp or things of that nature, right? It's holistic. But also, well, that's fine. I'm done. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the public? You know, just before taking any additional steps, I guess, want to poll the other commissioners on, you know, your thoughts on whether you feel prepared to vote on this. I think we're at a point where we have essentially all the information that we've asked for and that we are going to get. I know there is an open question on stabilization of the culvert, although I don't think that's a question that's going to be resolved in between now and the next meeting, as opposed to one, you know, that, you know, we could condition an approval on, you know, you need to investigate this and follow up with the conservation agent on it. So wanted to see if I could get your thoughts on if we're prepared to vote on this, or if you'd prefer to continue, and I guess also to the applicant, if there's anything that you feel is open right now that you'd prefer us to continue until the next hearing.
Pat, why don't you poll us whether or not we're ready to vote or not?
Sure. Jeff Milne, are you ready at this point to vote?
2 points. Number one, the applicant has requested a continuance, and I'd like to see a more fuller panel available. Tonight we're running really, really short in terms of commissioners. That's my thought.
So the answer is no.
The answer is no.
Okay.
Okay.
Michael Ryan, I'm curious as to the reason for the request for the continuance. And I also agree with Jeff's point about it'd be good to have the full slate of commissioners.
So that's a no?
So that's a no.
Okay, and I'm yes.
Okay, and I, for my part, would be ready to vote as well, but, you know, certainly respect everyone's opinion on having the full commission. So I think, Mark and your team, if it makes sense to continue this to the next hearing, then we will do so.
Yeah, and that's the primary reason we wanted to. We wanted the full commission to be present.
Great. That being the case, Jeff Milne, could I have a motion to continue this to, when is our next hearing?
August
4th.
August 4th, and
7:01.
what time are we scheduling it?
7:02.
7:02? Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'll give you a motion, Jeff Milne, I'll give you a motion to continue the NOI for 585 King Street to August 4th, 7:02.
Michael Ryan, a second.
Okay. Jeff Livingstone, how do you vote?
Vote to continue?
Okay. Michael?
Vote to continue.
Jeff Milne, vote to continue.
And Pat Gallagher, I vote to continue as well. So the NOI for 585 King Street has been continued to August 4th at 7:02. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you all.
Next up, we have our final public hearing for the evening. This is a request for determination of applicability for the 48 Maple Street septic upgrade project. Is the applicant available with us tonight?
Yes.
Did you sign in, sir?
My name is Dave Terrian. I'm the applicant's representative for the upgrade of this septic system at 48 Maple Street. I brought a plan that's a little bit larger than what you had. I have extra copies if it's any benefit. Otherwise, I'll just go by this.
That's fine.
I'm not entirely sure when the original system was installed, but it has a 1,500-gallon septic tank, so I'm assuming it's after 1996 with the change in Title V. At this point, they have a field system, and they need to upgrade it. The intention is to pump the tank and inspect it, and if the tank is in good repair, then they would just use the existing tank. And the intention is to remove the existing trenches or leach field and then reinstall a new one at essentially the same location. It does move a bit further away from the wetlands, but not a significant amount. It's all within the footprint of the original area. Construction would be done from the driveway with a temporary storage area. I don't anticipate that there'll be much material stored on site because of limited space, but that'll give them the opportunity if they have to. They're proposing to use the compost socks and erosion and siltation control, and the area will be loamed and seeded once the work is done.
Out of curiosity, is this under, maybe Ricky, is this under like existing, like probably like your lawn? I
It's
guess?
existing lawn, yeah.
The activity as proposed, just to comment, it is proposed, it's an exempt activity under the Wetlands Protection Act. So we're more than 50 feet from the wetland area, and it's a relatively level area.
Brika, did you have any questions?
No questions. I would
Or
recommend
comments?
approval for a negative determination without conditions, considering they already permitted or included what I would permit.
Jeff Milne, any questions or comments?
No questions, sir.
Okay. Jeff Livingstone?
No.
Michael?
No questions, thanks.
Okay. I also do not have any questions. Comfortable with the application. This is a public hearing. Do any members of the public have any questions or comments on this? Okay. Hearing none, could I take a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Milne, I'll give you a motion to close the public hearing for 48 Maple Street Septic Upgrade Project RDA.
Michael Ryan, second.
Okay. Jeff Livingstone, how do you vote?
Vote to close.
Okay. Michael?
Vote to close.
Jeff Milne, vote to close.
And Pat Gallagher, I vote to close as well. So the public hearing is closed. Can I hear a motion to approve a negative determination for the project?
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Milne, I'll give you a motion to approve a negative determination for the project on 48 Maple Street Septic Upgrade.
Michael Ryan, second.
Great. Thank you. Jeff Livingstone, how do you vote?
Vote to approve?
Okay. Michael?
Vote to approve.
Jeff Milne, vote to approve.
And Pat Gallagher, I vote to approve as well. So the negative determination is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So that wraps up our public hearings for tonight. Next item up on our agenda is a permit modification for Franklin Flex Space. See, Rick, are you here for this one? Rick, if you're talking, you're on mute right now. Brika, while we wait, because I think Rick Goodrow is on for the applicant. Anything from your perspective? Any questions on this?
No, my understanding of the plan that I saw was that the building has gotten a little bit larger, but it is outside of our jurisdiction. But even still, they've moved the building and the parking area farther away from the wetland complex down slope. I'm not entirely sure if there's any stormwater issues within the buffer zone. I know typically stormwater is outside of the jurisdiction of the commission, but if it's within the buffer zone, then it does become our jurisdiction. So that would be my only question of Rick. And then if he had a number, a square foot or linear feet number of the development through the buffer zone for our recording purposes.
Rick, can you hear us?
I can, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. Trying to unmute myself. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes,
You
we
can hear? Great.
Yep.
All right, very good. Sorry about that. As Brika had mentioned, the main change to this proposal is the increase in the size of the buildings. The buildings have gotten 2 foot 8 inches wider and 2 foot 8 inches longer. The building's spacing has been reduced from 40 feet to 36 feet. That's the space between building 1, building 2, and also building 2 and building 3. The building walls furthest away from the wetland are maintained to keep the zoning setback requirement of 31 feet. So the buildings have basically been relocated. The walls proposed to be relocated 2 foot 8 inches closer to the westerly boundary where the wetland resource area is located. None of the proposed building will be located within the 100-foot buffer zone. We are proposing for the striping for the pedestrian access that you can see located along the westerly side of the buildings. That would be located partially within the buffer zone. So the additional roof area of the 3 buildings are in areas that were previously proposed to be asphalt. So there are no changes to the impervious area in and around the buildings, with the exception of the 2 areas between the building. Originally, those were to be 40 feet in width of asphalt pavement. They're now 36 feet. So the area to the east of the buildings, which is approximately 16 feet in depth, is actually going to be narrower than we had originally proposed, and therefore there'll be a reduction of about 192 square feet of impervious coverage on the entire parcel. So a small number, but in fact a reduction in the proposed impervious coverage. And again, that's located outside of the buffer zone area.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rick. Gary, I know you guys had, I think, initially reviewed this. Did you have any questions or comments, particularly on the stormwater?
No, we had, I came to this exact same conclusion that Rick had, that the impervious is not being modified, so all of the stormwater structures still meet all the setback requirements under the standards, so there really is no impact whatsoever. It just It just, it sounds to me like they just finally bought a building and it just came in a little bit larger than what they originally had planned. That was it.
Well said, Gary. That's exactly what happened.
Well, I had no questions or comments. Jeff Milne?
I have no questions either, sir.
Okay. Jeff Livingstone?
No, no questions.
Okay. Michael?
No questions, thank you.
So this is not a public hearing, so I think, at this point, take a motion to approve the requested modification.
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Milne, I'll give you a motion to approve the Franklin Flex Space permit modification.
Second, Michael Ryan.
Thanks, Mike. Jeff Livingstone, how do you vote?
Approve.
Okay, Michael?
Approve.
Jeff Milne, approve.
Okay. Pat Gallagher, I vote to approve as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and commission members. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye, Rick.
Thanks, Rick. You too.
Thank you.
And thank you, Gary.
Thanks.
All right,
Gary.
thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
You too now. Bye-bye.
So the last item on our agenda tonight is the violation for 305 Union Street. I don't believe we have anyone on from the owner. The owner's attorney, unfortunately, also came down with COVID this week and so had requested that we continue this matter and this discussion to our next meeting. We did receive some information and from the from the owner rather, that I think we received it a couple days ago and so too close to the hearing to really have reviewed it. However, at first glance, it does look to be at least responsive to the requirements of our initial enforcement order. So I think that's a promising step.
Good.
Rika or any other commissioners, any questions, updates?
I don't know if I can speak on what they submitted without, I'm going to defer to you for that, Pat. Can I speak on what was submitted?
Yeah, no, can you give just a summary of
Sure.
what they had sent in?
Yep. So we received a letter from FSL Associates. So that's, and I'm not saying this to be any fact, the unlicensed debater, right? And the tone was definitely better than what the letters we've received previously. They received results of the cistern water. They took, they sampled at the top of the water and then midspan down the cistern, and there is asbestos in the water. It is below the drinking water limit. I've passed those tests on to DPW to verify their validity, to do their own sort of test. I'm still waiting personally on my downstream results to come back. This letter does verify that the cistern is an open system. I want to put the caveat in there that Mass DEP states that cannot be safely definitively proven until all the material in the water is out, which it is still there. As far as I know, Mass DEP has not received a non-traditional work plan. That non-traditional work plan would still need to be from a licensed abater, which any scope of work that I would have to accept, that I would extend to you to accept would also have to be from a licensed abater. Otherwise, we're crossing hairs, right?
Right.
And that, so they, again, this letter was requesting that the enforcement order be satisfied, but unfortunately, it is not. Section C, in my opinion, it does not. Section C of the enforcement order does say they need to submit a restoration plan that is contingent upon Mass DEP sampling and reporting processes. And this is not it, aside from the fact that there is no scope of work. So I think that summarizes it pretty well.
Right, and I would just add too, I mean, I think, anytime we get materials 2 days before the hearing, I am glad that we received the materials, but I think it's fair to take, the time that we need to review them.
Yep.
So I guess barring any questions, you know, I think it's simply just to continue the enforcement order until our next hearing on August 4th.
I can extend, oh, sorry, Pat, one other comment. The enforcement order does expire today.
Yep.
So
That's what I
you would
thought.
still
Yep.
need to extend, to vote to extend it and then continue.
So can I take a motion then to extend the current enforcement order for another 2 weeks to August, or I guess,
August
2
4th.
weeks from today? Or 2 weeks to August 4th?
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Miller, I'll give you a motion to extend the enforcement order on 305 Union Street to August 1st?
4th.
August 4th, I'm sorry.
Michael Ryan, second.
Jeff Livingstone?
Approve.
Michael?
Approved.
Jeff Milne, approve.
Okay. And Pat Gallagher, I vote to approve as well.
May I make a
So the
May I make a comment?
Please.
I have not obviously seen the material that was presented 2 days ago, but I thank Rika for her great summary. I'm willing to approve this extension once, but that's it. If there's no movement between now and 2 weeks, I will not be agreeing to another extension, period. I just want to make that clear to the commission. Thank you.
And thank you, Jeff. And just to add, and Rika, please feel free to add any color as well to this. We spoke with town council on this, you know, this past week. We do have a meeting set up with the owner and with their consultants to talk through this and next steps. So I think we're getting to a point of, you know, having the owner's cooperation on this. I think, you know, it's a question of just not really knowing the right way to proceed. The owner not really knowing the right way to proceed. So we're trying to push her in the right direction.
Mr. Chairman, is that meeting with the town council?
Yes, Jamie, Brian, Mark Sorrell, Pat's invited, myself, and then everybody
whole
on,
team.
everybody is invited.
Okay.
And there has been some traction with DEP as well, thanks to Jamie.
And Mark Sorrell's view of this throughout, and we've had a number of conversations with him. The point he's maintained is that DEP really should be the primary the primary enforcement agency here, and that so his concern is just making sure that, you know, we stay in our lane and you know, not step on DEP's toes. So I'm also trying to be cognizant of that.
Yep, I agree with Mark.
Any other questions for now?
Just a process question. So is DEP already working this in parallel with us, or are they waiting for us to close our enforcement order?
So there's a few different agencies and departments involved with this because it is asbestos. None of which, I'm not trying to create a bias, right? So you have Mass DEP, the asbestos division. They're handling that abatement. You have Mass DEP solid waste facilities because there's dumping of construction material. Mass DEP wetland and waterways, which is who we operate under, is aware and has been out, but cannot become involved unless there's an impact to the BVW,
Right.
which is farther downstream. And then you also have DPW, OSHA, Department of Labor, and all these other agencies which are not DEP. So a lot of people have become aware, and we've tried to work cooperatively with her for this enforcement order, right?
Before it became.
Before it
Yeah.
became such a
But
big issue.
Too late, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
This is how it usually happens.
Well, I've been told I've earned my stripes. So.
You've what?
Earned my stripes.
Oh.
Yep.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Pat.
Yeah, but we don't want you to have to.
Thanks.
That's the problem.
Thanks. It's all right. I'm still here.
So I think that's, unless there's anything else anyone wants to talk about tonight, I think that probably does the trick, and we can take a motion to close.
I actually have one discussion item I'd like to bring up, which is what
Sure.
I was going to continue to Karen Miller back here. I would really like to get the blog up and running again. We have a nature blog. It's called a nature blog on the conservation page. It's on the left-hand side. Some of my predecessors have posted things in there about vernal pool egg masses, things of that nature, and I think it would be a really good outreach and education, inspiration place for people to go, residents to go, post photos, ask questions not related to permitting, not related to
Yeah.
WPA. Additionally, just some ideas that I had now that we have a new GIS hire is to get people to document where egg masses are or turtle crossings, and then they could submit that on a form to me, and we could create an internal GIS map. DPW can have signs, we can put signs up, things of that nature. So then we get some more citizen science involvement in things that just aren't directly related to permitting projects. So I wanted to get your opinion on that.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Thanks. I started toying around with it today, and I'm very stimulated and excited.
We've always taken a major position on outreach and education, right? We've really tried very hard for the last decade to orient the commission to that. And not, again, as I keep mentioning, not be such like a penalty organization,
Right.
but an education organization, right?
Right. So I'm excited about that. Thanks.
I think you just need to assign us topics to write about.
Okay. Oh, geez.
You need some homework.
Sounds like a book report.
Well, it's a blog, so, blog posts are what, 200 words?
Yeah, something like that.
Not too bad.
No, I'm excited, and my personal goal as well is if I go out and I see things during my site visits, and I can take photos and I can post it and post about rare wetland plants and things of that nature, and get people more involved. Post about Earth Day, the Earth Day celebration, things like that. But I do have to check with Lily, our media's person, to see what can and can't be posted about, if comments are allowed, things like that. What are the legalities there? So, thanks. That's all I had.
I think it's a great idea.
Thanks, Matt.
Can I bring up one final follow-on also from Karen's comments? So I understand we do have a tree commissioner in Franklin. Are there any processes around that? Like, do they, I don't know, is it just an educational question for me?
Sure. So I don't want to speak for Brutus. This is his name, Brutus. When it comes to, say, within wetlands or conservation land, typically he's out of the picture. He doesn't touch it. He also doesn't have enough, DPW can only do so much. So a lot of his tree commissioner, as I understand, duties are for the right-of-way or the ornamental trees that you see along the street, right? And he does help out homeowners every now and then. Again, not putting words in his mouth. I'm sure he does a lot more, right? He's also director of DPW. I know, Michael, you had asked a few hearings ago when I first started about trees and bylaws and things of that nature, and I've reached out to the Medway conservation agent, and she has actually incorporated a tree bylaw under their wetlands, local wetland bylaw. So that's something that I was going to look and compare and contrast. Pat and I had talked about that already, maybe including that. We are right in the annual report and open space plan season right now for me personally. So I have it on my list of things to address and present to you. I just haven't gotten down to that yet.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I mean, Brika and I spoke a little bit about this as well, that, I think there are a lot of cases where in connection with an MBZA, for example, where someone is doing a small project and needs to take down trees, and where it's not related to a safety issue, because that's obviously in a different category. But I don't know that we have a standard methodology for saying if you are taking down a certain number of trees, that you have to do X, Y, and Z, to mitigate that. So I think that's one of the questions. Is there a way to kind of standardize that so that, because it does seem sometimes like different applications, are treated a little bit differently for maybe random reasons around trees that have to be replaced, or how many, or what size, or things of that nature.
I have an additional comment. Considering the plan that we all received this week, I can also ask, it's not uncommon to ask the service forester to come and present to local Concom. So if that's something that you would like me to do, I can do that. Additionally, this is also in this realm. I was invited to present to AgCom on how their exemptions under the WPA and what they are not exempt from in Chapter 61 land, which is clearing adjacent to within wetland resources, and that's on Monday at 7 if you would like to attend. I'm first on the docket. But I can do a similar presentation to Concom as well.
Is that here, or is that?
Yes, it's in the third floor training room.
Monday at 7 o'clock?
Monday at 7.
PM?
Yep.
Okay.
And it is hybrid. I will be in person.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I guess one follow-on question. So like today, we heard that 15 trees were being taken down around the utility poles. Is that what you're talking about, Mr. Chair? That maybe there would be some type of a bylaw that would, I don't know, replace them somewhere else or something like that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and that particular project, I imagine is exempt, and we wouldn't necessarily be able to require that for utility type projects. But for, say if someone was putting in a new patio or putting in a swimming pool, and they were taking out trees for that, I think we often require them to replace those trees, particularly if they're very mature, healthy trees. But I think it's a little bit of a, random approach and not necessarily a quantitative approach to how we require trees to be replaced.
Sorry, not to interrupt. Pat, were you finished?
Yep.
Okay. When I was operating as a consultant and working in Medway, Bridget is her name, Agent Graziano, she was really interested in protecting trees with a certain DBH, so that's diameter at breast height.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So legacy type trees. So that was something that she would condition. So that's an option. What brings to mind is for Fairmount Farm and CJ, right? He didn't have to plant trees, but he did. So there are certain things that we could also condition that may not need to be a bylaw. I'm a huge fan of stumping in general, leaving stumps in place, right? Less soil disturbance, things of that nature. So that's something we could condition. It could be over a certain limit of trees, perhaps, types of trees. There's a difference between what ornamental, if it's a blue spruce, versus a red maple or something that's supposed to be here. So
again, this is going back many years, but I was told, and I think it was by a former agent, that there was, or at some point there was, a list of, quote, historically protected trees in Franklin that were deemed to be of a certain age. The reason why I know this is because I was told I have the oldest ash tree in Franklin on my property, and it's supposed to be a protected tree. And the reason why that came up is because every time DPW goes down, they chop off more of it, and apparently they're not supposed to without a permit, I was told. So, but apparently again, at some point I was told there's a list of very specific trees of a certain massive diameter that are 100, 200, whatever years old, but they're all supposedly listed and protected where their locations are, someplace in town. I don't know where. I have no idea who would have that, or when they would have had that, but
Yeah.
that's what I was told.
I can look. For sure. I'd like to look for that.
If there was such a list, who would approve any work being done to those trees? That would be the tree commissioner? Or the?
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. It depends.
Is that considered a natural resource?
See, right?
Right?
Yeah. My jurisdiction extends a little bit more.
Right, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can look into that. I'd be interested to see where that
I'm
is.
inspired
Have you
by
heard
this.
of anything like that?
Right.
Okay.
I'm inspired by this discussion, thank you.
There you go. Stimulating, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Well, that was all I had.
Did we have minutes?
Take a motion to close?
No, no minutes to approve.
Mr. Chairman, would you like a motion to close?
Yes, please.
Jeff Milne, motion to close the meeting.
Second?
Yes.
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 Undebatable.
Have a good night, everyone.
You too. Get well. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
What's your plan for?
Sometimes as we age, if we are ill, we might be too sick to be as active as we used to be.
As we used to be. Insulin. Insulin is a fairly expensive medication. It's $145. I don't know